All right, so again, welcome everyone. My name is Nick, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's virtual info session all about the GSA application, which guess what, is now open and available to you. We were able to open the GSA application yesterday, a week early, which means that after today's walkthrough of the application portal, you can start your GSA application right away. If you haven't already, we've already had a great turnout in terms of applications being started, so kudos to you all for getting an early start. Today's session is being live streamed on Facebook and recorded. The recording will be made publicly available in the coming days. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end of this presentation, so feel free to enter your questions if you're watching on Zoom as you have them, but I just ask that you use the Q&A feature within Zoom. So if you have a question, don't enter it into the chat feature, enter your question into the Q&A feature. And for those of you on Facebook, I'm going to try and keep an eye on the stream there as well to see if you have any questions. But just know that if you're watching on Facebook, you're actually watching us on Zoom. So I'll be answering those questions first. If you're attending this in real time via Zoom, you will receive a survey after today's presentation. And I really ask that you complete that survey because it's super helpful to GSA in terms of providing us with vital information to best assess our recruitment efforts. So today's session, like I mentioned, is part of a larger series of virtual info sessions GSA is hosting throughout autumn for applicants, parents, and educators. So as you can see, we've already had a couple of webinars, but if you missed those, no worries. Recordings are available on our website. We're going to do some light review from those virtual info sessions in a moment, but I highly recommend them as they are pretty in-depth. And of course, knowledge is power, right? So taking some time to view those recordings can only help you in your ability to submit a GSA application with confidence. So those previous webinars are on some similar information, but slightly different focuses in terms of the topic. In November and December, we're going to host a series of virtual info sessions that will focus on one art form at a time. We'll be joined by GSA faculty and educators in these art form specific webinars, so we can hear directly from some of the people who will be reviewing your applications, which is a pretty cool opportunity. So we'll hear what they're looking for and their advice for applicants. And then finally, we'll have an open Q&A info webinar on December 17th, about 3 weeks before the application is ultimately due on January 10th. So again, you can register for all of these webinars today by visiting GSA's website, kentuckygsa.org. Just go to the prospective student section and look there for the information about virtual info sessions. And that's also where the recordings of each info session will be posted. And remember, these info sessions are not the only way to get information about the GSA application process. You can contact us anytime with any kind of question at gsainfo@kentuckyperformingarts.org. I promise there are no scary adults at GSA waiting to judge you. We love chatting with our applicants, and it is our pleasure and our job to help you out. Also encourage you to follow us on social media. You can search our program name to find us on Facebook, or our handle on Instagram is @KYGSA. So before we dive into the GSA application portal, the main topic of today's presentation, let's quickly review some big picture facts about GSA. So again, if you've attended a previous GSA info session, hang tight. The next couple of minutes will be review of information you've already heard, and then we'll move on. So first off, just a bit about me. And I figured since it's Halloween week, I would include a picture of myself in one of my favorite costumes ever, Cookie Monster. So my name is Nick Koval, and when I am not dressing up as a Sesame Street character, I am the director of the Governor's School for the Arts. And I'm also an alum of our vocal music program. And I vividly remember what it was like for me to fill out the GSA application and to navigate the questions and, the intimidation and nerves that I think can naturally come up with applying to any program like GSA. So I'm really passionate about ensuring our applicants have a great experience. I want all of you to feel confident because you feel informed. So I and the entire GSA team are excited and proud to answer your questions throughout the process. So what is GSA? Put simply, the Governor's School for the Arts is a community of artists that empowers Kentucky's next generation of creative leaders. The primary way we accomplish this, and the reason you're likely here today, is GSA's summer program. So GSA's summer program is a 3-week residential program for high school aged artists that takes place on a college campus. Students are immersed in an intense, challenging, and exhilarating learning environment in one of 9 art forms. And while each student focuses on the one art form they are attending GSA for, interdisciplinary collaboration is a major component of the program, meaning students are also exposed to and engaged with art forms other than their own. As I mentioned, GSA has 9 core art forms. So they are as follows: architecture and design, creative writing, dance, and our dance program does focus on ballet, modern, and choreography, drama, film and photography, instrumental music, musical theater, visual art, and vocal music. And remember, you can apply for up to 2. Best of all of this is provided at no cost to you, the students. So GSA does not charge tuition, room or board, or any other fees for attending the program. We were proud that we've been tuition free since we were founded in 1987. So what kind of students are we seeking to join the GSA summer program? Well, first off, in order to apply, you have to currently be a sophomore or a junior in the state of Kentucky. You can attend a public school, private school, homeschool, that doesn't matter. Of course, we're looking for students with a baseline level of artistic skill, but we're really looking for students with artistic potential as well. So if you're a little intimidated about whether or not you've had as much, formal training as maybe some other applicants, don't be too worried about that. We still welcome and encourage your application because, again, we're looking for potential just as much as we're looking for skill. Of course, we're looking for students who are passionate about their art form, who are collaborative and open-minded, who are eager to learn, and we welcome students to apply for the program from all backgrounds and all identities because we want GSA to be a diverse community where we exhibit respect, exchange, tolerance, and empathy. So here we're looking at a general overview of the application timeline. The initial online application, which we're focusing on today, is due by January 10th. So we recommend turning in your application at least 1 week early to avoid the inevitable web traffic on the application portal in a couple days prior to the application deadline. So you're seeing January 10th on here, but I encourage you to complete and submit your application by the end of the calendar year if you can. Just trust me, it might save you a headache on January 10th at 11:58 p.m. On February 19th, applicants learn whether they've advanced onto the second final round of the application process, and those who do are deemed GSA finalists. So those folks are invited to a second and final round of auditions that is usually in person at the University of Kentucky, taking place on March 19th or 20th. We are making plans to accommodate the final round virtually if we are unable to convene in person. So in that case, finalists will be updated on what's required in a virtual version of the final round. So hang tight for more information, but either way, put March 19th and 20th and light pencil on your calendar and visualize success that you'll be there as a finalist. We make the big announcement on April 16th when we release the list of accepted students for GSA 2021, as well as a waiting list of alternates. And then finally, the GSA 2021 summer program will take place from June 27th through July 17th on the campus of the University of Kentucky in Lexington. So by submitting your application, you're taking your first step towards next June, which is pretty hard to believe. So throughout the entire process, we will never ask you for your GPA, your SAT, or your ACT scores. Students can apply for up to 2 art forms. As we know, our artists are often multidisciplinary. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like in the application in a moment. There is a $30 application fee collected just before submitting your application, and that fee increases to $35 total if you apply for 2 art forms. Just so you know, students on free and reduced lunch can have this fee completely waived by the click of a button in the application, no questions asked. So we're going to turn our attention now to taking a step-by-step review of the GSA application. But before we do, one last thing, an important reminder. And if you were on our last webinar, our last virtual info session, I bet you can guess what this reminder is. Don't forget to read your applicant guide. So it's okay if you haven't reviewed it today before watching this session, but just be aware that some of the information we covered today might make more sense once you review the applicant guide, all of which are available on GSA's website. And if you're thinking, this guy's saying this term applicant guide, what is that? Well, just to review, there's one applicant guide for each art form. And in this document, you're going to find an overview of the coursework of the summer program for that specific art form. Perhaps most importantly, guidelines for what you will submit in your initial application. We're also going to give you a description of the final round for that art form if your application is forwarded along. And then equally as important, we're going to tell you the criteria, which is what your application is being scored on. Super important information so that you can look at your materials through the lens of that criteria and kind of self-assess and work with your teachers and your mentors to talk about, how your application materials meet that criteria and maybe, what you could do to best meet that criteria. And then we're also going to give you a list of tips that are developed by the GSA adjudicators themselves. So that's why the applicant guide is super important, and I highly recommend you read that from start to finish before starting your GSA application. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment while I get our test application portal up and running. So give me just a moment here. Entertain yourselves in the chat. Maybe say hello to everyone if you haven't already. And I see some questions already coming in. That's great, awesome. Once I get through walking us through some applications here, I will get us started on that Q&A session. So thanks for getting your questions in there nice and early. Okay, beautiful. All right. So I am going to start sharing our screen again. And here we go. So what you are looking at right now is the GSA website. So when you type in KentuckyGSA.org, this is what you're going to see. Notice that the URL will kind of change a little bit from KentuckyGSA.org, and that is because our website is housed on the website for Kentucky Performing Arts, which is GSA's parent organization. So just have an awareness of that. So this is our home page, and you'll see the first thing that you see here is interested in applying to GSA 2021. Well, I know that you are, so you'll click on this button, learn more and apply. Now we'll take you to our prospective students, parents, and educators section. And I just want to point out, there's a lot of great information leaked from this part of the website. So you'll see here, so if you scroll down, there's apply for GSA 2021, and we're going to tell you right here, we strongly recommend that you scroll down and review GSA's virtual info sessions and applicant guide of art forms of interest for your art forms of interest before starting your application. So below this, if you click here under important dates, info sessions, and deadlines, that's where you can register for future info sessions and also watch the recordings of past info sessions. And then if you scroll down applicant guides, if you click this button, it will take you to our 9 applicant guides for you to review. There's some other great resources in the rest of the section that we won't review right now. But I'm now going to click on apply now. And this is going to actually take me, if you look at the URL, away from GSA's website onto a website called getaccepted.com. So accepted, which is spelled like the word accepted without the very last E, so ACCEPTD, is the application portal that GSA uses. So you can still see a lot of our branding on here and everything. And then I'm going to point you in the direction of these orange directions here, this orange text. So you can see that to start an application for GSA 2021, you're going to select your art form from the drop-down menu to the left. But we've got some other notes here for you. So when you select this drop-down menu, I want to take a moment to point out something for our creative writers. There are 2 options for creative writing, okay? So you'll see creative writing fiction, creative nonfiction, and playwriting, and creative writing poetry. Creative writers, you have to submit a manuscript, and that manuscript has to represent one genre. So you are going to select one of the 2 options that lists the genre of manuscript that you are going to be submitting. So creative writers, before you start your application, review the applicant guide, and you do need to choose a genre of your manuscript before starting your application. So you'll select which of those is applicable to your manuscript. Instrumental musicians, pretty straightforward. Just notice that there's a lot of different options here based on what instrument type you are applying in. And with both creative writing and instrumental music, you are not applying for different creative writing programs or different instrumental music programs. You are applying for the one creative writing GSA program and the one instrumental music GSA program. It's just that these are split up for a couple different reasons on the back end of the application portal. So don't get confused there. If you are applying for up to 2 art forms, which you can, you'll see here that you will need the application ID number in the confirmation email you received from submitting your first application. So what that means is you're applying for 2 art forms. When you start your application for the first art form, you will be assigned an application ID number. And just make a note of that. You should get an email with that information as well, because you're going to need to input that application ID number into your second application for your second art form, just so it realizes that you're the same person. And again, we'll see a couple things relevant to that when we look at the application here in a moment. And then, of course, just another reminder to review your applicant guide and the info sessions. And then also just know that because you're on this portal accepted, they have an amazing help desk and a great support team. So if you're having any technical issues with the application at any time or having issues uploading something, I encourage you to reach out to Accepted's help desk. They're very responsive and super helpful. But if your question is more about, the type of information that you need for the application, or you're asking about, the guidelines for, how many paintings you need to upload or something like that, reach out to GSA, and here's our info there. And don't worry if you ask a question to GSA that's really for Accepted, we'll send you in their direction. We'll get your questions answered either way, but just know that those are two different directions you can go in. So let's go over here and into our drop-down menu. And for the purposes of today's walkthrough of the application portal, we're going to be pretending like we're a creative writing applicant. So I'm going to start by clicking on creative writing here. Poetry. So I'm going to be a creative writer submitting a poetry manuscript. And you can see here, I've got two green buttons that say apply to creative writing. Doesn't matter which one I click. I'm going to click this one here. And the next thing it's going to do is prompt me to make sure that I am eligible to apply for GSA. So I am a resident of Kentucky. Are you a sophomore or junior in high school? And then this is the third box is just to point out again, we're not going to ask you for your GPA, SAT, or ACT. So I'm going to click that because I'm totally fine with that. And now I'm going to apply to creative writing poetry. All right, so I am using a test applicant account right now. So what did not just happen, that will happen to a lot of you, is at this point, it will ask you to set up your accepted profile. So it's almost like a social media profile. You'll just type in your email address, you'll set up a password, and you'll get your account started. I want to point out, if you are under the age of 16, what's going to happen is you will see this screen. Actually, I think all of you will see this screen at some point. I'm applying for myself or I'm applying for someone else. Of course, for you all, if you're a student, it's going to make sense for you to apply for yourself, right? At some point, as you're signing up for your accepted account, it's going to ask for your birthday. If you are under the age of 16, you do have to get a parent to actually sign up for accepted and then give you permission to apply to GSA. So in that case, there is information in Accepted's help desk on how to do that. But your parent is actually going to come in here and click the button for I am applying for someone else. They will set up an account and then they will link you, the student, to that account. And that will allow you, the student, to start your GSA application. So once you get into it, it's pretty self-explanatory. Again, there's information about that on Accepted's help desk, but I just wanted to point that out for those of you who are not yet 16. So back to the application. So you'll see right now we're in what's called the application part 1 information section. And this is really just about getting your name and getting your recommenders identified so that the first thing we can do is get your recommenders sent the forms that they need to fill out, and so that they have as much time as possible. And you're not going to be able to see much of the application beyond that until you do that. So let's walk through this part real quick just to see what that's like. And by the way, if you ever need a reminder of the guidelines for your art form, you can click this application guidelines button up here, and it will give you a link to the applicant guide for your art form. So you can see here, we're on application part 1. I've already got my name in here as test, just because I'm using this test account. I have typed in my address here, so 501 West Main Street. You saw that already in there. And you can see I've gone in here and already put in a lot of this information. So I put in my student phone number, my student email address, and then down here you will see this question, do you give GSA permission to share your contact information with colleges or universities? So essentially, just by applying to GSA and showing that level of interest in the arts, there are a lot of colleges and universities that are really interested in recruiting you, just because they would like to show you other ways and to get involved in the arts by attending their college. So if you select yes here, it just gives us the permission to share your email address, your contact information with some schools so that they can recruit you. So it's a great opportunity just to get your foot in the door with some colleges. But again, totally fine if you want to click no. It does not have any bearing on your GSA application. And I want to point out, as I'm making little subtle changes in the application over here, you'll see this timestamp. last saved at. So it is actually saving my application as I go along, but at any point I can just click Save Draft and it will automatically save where I am in the application so that I can log out and come back in and pick up where I left off if I need to. So I filled out everything on this page, so I'm going to click Continue. And now we're at the page for recommendation requests. So this is where you identify your 2 recommenders. And again, more information about who these recommenders need to be are discussed in previous virtual info sessions and in the applicant guides. So you've got your teacher recommender and your school administrator recommender. And you don't even have to type in their names. You literally just need to put in their email address. So I'm going to use an email address that hopefully all of you know and recognize. These 2 people will have 2 different email addresses for you because they're 2 different people. But for the purposes of today's presentation, I'm going to put in the same email address. Please, when you're putting these in, double, triple check the spelling. We can go in and correct these if we need to later on, but it will just kind of save everyone a little bit of time if you just really make sure that the spelling of these email addresses are correct. I'm doing that right now. I think I got them in there. Okay. Then we'll click Continue. And then that's it for this first part. So you'll see this is your last chance to review before submitting your application. Don't worry, this is not when you're submitting your entire application to GSA. There is more to come. This is just you submitting the information about your recommender. So I have a chance here to review everything. It's looking pretty good. You can see where it says this field is required, but it's got something there in terms of data, so we're fine. So I should be able to click Submit. Should be good to go. So once you submit the first part of the application, you'll see this pop-up window. And I want to point out a couple things. First off, you're not finished. Even though you have submitted part of your application, you're not done yet. Second of all, here is your application ID number. So this would be a great time up here at the top to jot down this application ID number. You should have that emailed to you as well. And then just take some time to read this text. So you've now completed the first portion of the application, but now you're going to have to log back into your application to complete the remainder of the process. So when you log back in, your application will allow you to upload new information. So if I click off of this pop-up window, it's going to go away. And then you'll see here, I can come back and restart my creative writing poetry application. I continue, and here is an entirely new part of the application. So this is where a lot of the information and the artistic examples that you're going to upload are provided, okay? So let's walk through this real quick. So the first page that you're going to see here is a lot of questions about demographics. We're really, asking a lot of this just so we know who you are, where you're from, the most respectful language to use when addressing you. So to go through these questions here, first off, we're going to ask if this is your second application this year through GSA, to GSA through Accepted. So if you are applying in 2 art forms, this is relevant to you. You will have the option to either say, yes, this is my second application, meaning this is the application of your second art form, or no, this is my first application. So you're either only applying in 1 art form or you're applying for 2 art forms, but this is your first one. So see if I click on yes, this is my second. Down here, it's going to ask me to put in the application ID from my first application. So that's when you'll want to enter that in. But for now, we're going to say, no, this is my first application. Do you qualify for free or reduced lunch? Your date of birth. We ask for your gender, and for all of these, you can select more than one. We ask for your pronouns. And again, pronouns are just how you prefer people to refer to you in the third person. So for instance, we wish him a happy birthday, or we wish her a happy birthday. Him and her are the pronouns in there. So you can select which pronouns you like to use, or that you do use from that drop-down menu. We ask for your grade, your county of residence, what race or ethnicity that you identify with, and then your high school. So I want to point out how this high school window works. Let's see, let me click that off there. So this is actually a search bar. So let's say I went to Oldham County High School. Me, Nick Cobalt, went to Oldham County High School. So what I would do is I would type in, I would recommend just putting in the first few letters of your high school, and then you click enter. And then this window will pop up with all of your options. This is actually connected to a high school database, all right? So you can see there's actually a high school on here with Oldham in the name that's in South Dakota. But I'm going to choose my high school, and then it will autofill in there. If you are homeschooled or if you can't find your high school, what you should do is select the option for no school listed. And when you click that, it will pop up this window here that says, please enter your high school. And if you're homeschooled, you can indicate that here. So you can put in homeschool. I decided that I go to the School of Awesome. So that's how the high school listing works. It's just a little funky, so I wanted to walk through that. How did you first hear about GSA? Have you attended a GSA virtual info session? All of you will be clicking yes to that question. And then you will upload a headshot. So this is the first upload that you'll be doing. So you'll simply click on this window. And I've got my test headshot here. And as you can see, it will upload that file and process it. And probably by the time you're finished submitting your or filling out your application, that will be fully uploaded. There's a certification section down here where you will click a box that provides a pop-up window. And this is just you certifying that everything in your application is your own work and that you have not plagiarized any of this material. So that's super important, right? So you'll sign there. And then moving on, there is more contact information that we ask for. So we ask for phone numbers, email address for you. You can even give us a second email address if you would like. We're going to ask for your parent or guardian information. So that's their name, their address, their phone number, their email address. If there is a second parent or guardian in your life, you can input their information here. And then we're also going to ask you, with whom do you live? So in this case, because I've only put in one parent and guardian, I'm going to say parent guardian number 1. And then you will get to your art form specific questions and uploads. So this page is going to look a little bit different for everyone. So again, keep in mind, we are looking at a creative writing application right now. So this is going to look a little different for every other art form. Now, I just said that, but every art form will have the personal question, short essay, and personal question video. So just like I did on the previous screen, you'll just click on this gray box and you will upload your material. You can see I've already put in a couple documents here. So there's my personal short essay that's going to upload, my personal question video. You can see I've put that in there. And once you have these documents uploaded, if you click on these, you'll see it opens up a new window. So there you can see my fake video essay just played. But I want to point out that you can rotate these from the bottom of the window if needed. Or let's say you accidentally upload something, you can click this little wheel here and you can change it, you can remove it, you can edit it. So you have a few options there. So generally speaking with the application, if you make a mistake, you can fix it before submitting it. So creative writers have to upload a poetry manuscripts. You'll upload that here. And then creative writing questions. So each art form is going to have a few different questions to answer. They are specific to your art form. And most of them focus on your level of access to classes or arts training in your art form. I really just kind of want to read this text to you right here. These questions are to help us better understand your involvement in and access to the arts activities and training, your involvement in and access to arts activities and training, and to get to know you better as an artist, or in this case, a writer. There are no right or wrong answers to these questions, nor are we looking for a specific profile of a student over another profile of a student. So we just ask that you answer these questions honestly, without judgment. Don't be intimidated if we ask if you've studied your art form privately, but you haven't. Also, don't be intimidated if we ask if you studied your art form privately and you have. Again, all of this is just context for us as we review your materials and understand just where you're coming from and who you are. So creative writers, you'll see here, is there a creative writing program at your school? And you can select yes, and I participate in it. Yes, but I have not participated in it. Or no, this program does not exist at my school. Creative writers actually have a bit more open-ended questions than most other art forms. So again, these questions are going to be different art form to art form. So creative writers, because you're writers, we're going to ask you to write a few more answers than most other art forms. So for instance here, creative writers, who is your favorite author and why? What is your favorite book and why? And so on. And so just a few questions there. And again, for you to see what these questions are for your art form, just start your application, get your recommendation information in, and then submit that. And then you will be able to access this application part 2 information and come down to the art form specific questions uploads part. And you'll be able to review these questions and have plenty of time to answer them before the January 10th deadline. So the final window of this application portal is a preview page, which you can see I've not filled everything out here, so it's going to give me big orange warnings about what I have not yet filled out. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. And bear with me for just a second, because you know those cooking shows, or have you ever seen a cooking show where like they're making a recipe and they say, now we're going to put it in the oven for 2 hours. But oh, look, we've already got one that's been cooked for 2 hours. I'm now going to open up an application that has been totally filled out so that we can just take a look at that real quick. So hang with me for just a moment. Okay, here we go. We're almost to the end here, almost time for our questions. So I have now opened up a new application. This is actually a creative writing application as well, but also for fiction, but instead for fiction, creative, nonfiction, and playwriting. So again, the application looks the exact same, creative writers, but do pick the one that is aligned with your manuscript. So you can see here I've come through and filled out all the information that is needed for, you know, grade, county, high school, so on. You can see my headshot is uploaded there. So I'm going to go through and review all of this. Yeah, I've got my contact information up there. Shout out to my 606 folks on the webinar today. And then I'm going to check my parent and guardian information. Looks like I've got that there. It's looking good. I've got an address, name, phone number, email address, who I live with here at the bottom. And then for my art form specific questions and uploads, let's see, I've got my manuscript. Just take a look at that. Yep, looking good. Hey, if you apply for creative writing, know that your manuscript is going to be better than mine, because mine is blank. I've got my personal question video. It looks like it's upright and in the right position. I'm going to check it to make sure it's playing well and I can hear myself. My manuscript looks good. Beautiful. I've answered all my questions here below. And then I'm going to go to my preview panel. And again, this is your last chance to review before submitting your application, okay? So I'm going to go through here and make sure that all these answers are correct. They're looking good, but when I go to submit this application, I cannot change my answers. So, you know, if you get all this uploaded and it's, you know, December 5th or something like that, maybe sleep on it, come back, double check everything's looking good to you. And then you're going to have this green button over here that it says submit my application. Now, I'll point out early on in the application, I informed GSA that I qualify for free and reduced lunch. And if you remember from early in the presentation, that means I do not have to pay the $30 application fee. So if you do not qualify for free and reduced lunch, this button, I believe, will say submit and pay. So when you click that button, you will be prompted to pay that application fee. But since I am on free or reduced lunch in this application, I do not have to pay. So I will just click submit my application. And you'll see that I don't owe anything there. And I'll click submit. And we should be good to go. So there you go, all done. Your GSA application is submitted. You can kick your feet up and relax because the ball is no longer in your court. Maybe follow up with your recommenders just to make sure that they are able to get your recommendations in on time. You want to make sure you have good communication with your recommenders. We can see that on our end and send them little reminders like, hey, we haven't seen your recommendation yet, please fill it out. But beyond that, you should be good to go. So that is a walkthrough the application portal. I see we've got a few questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and open up our Q&A feature. And it looks like more questions are pouring in, which is fantastic. So we've got about 15 right now. Please keep adding them as you would like. And also, if you don't feel like sticking around for the Q&A session, you're welcome. You're welcome to go. Again, I'll just, before we jump in Q&A, remind you we're here to support you throughout your application process. So reach out to GSA info@KentuckyPerformingArts.org with any questions. We hope to see you in more of our virtual info sessions. And thanks for joining us today. So let's take a look at some of these questions. So I think how should we get our recommendations is one question. So hopefully we saw in the application portal that we just went through how to enter the email addresses of those folks. In the applicant guide, there's a lot of information about who those recommenders need to be, but essentially you're going to reach out to a teacher and a school administrator, or in some cases, if you don't have a school administrator, maybe because you're homeschooled or another extenuating circumstance. Well, being homeschooled is not an extenuating circumstance, but for some other reason, you can just use a mentor or a community leader to fill out that school administrator recommendation. So you'll reach out to those folks, let them know you're applying for GSA, that you're going to select them as your recommender. And when you select them as your recommender and send in their information, shoot them a text, an email, and let them know it should be in their email inbox. And it will be an email from accepted, and the subject line will say documentation request. So it's a little bit of a quirk there in terms of what will be in their inbox, but just tell them to keep an eye out for it. And if you all have any problems, let us know. So for vocal music, there is no music that will be sent to you. Someone asked how music will be sent to them. So for vocal music, we are not sending you any music, but if at any point we need to, we will be in touch with you about how to do that. This is a great question. Is the choice of finalists for GSA similar to only some applicants being chosen per district in GSP? So a lot of folks are familiar with the Governor's Scholar Program, another governor's school in Kentucky. There's also another great program called the Governor's School for Entrepreneurship. So we have 3 governor's schools here in Kentucky. And while we're all 3 similar in that we're residential summer programs, our application processes are actually very different. So for GSA, there is no demographic quotas in terms of like so many applicants per, or so many people are accepted per county or per high school. So basically everything you know about the GSA process, everything you know about the GSP process with high schools nominating students per district, you don't have to think about that with GSA. For GSA, if you want to apply, you can apply without your school's permission or nomination. But we still encourage you to make sure that your school knows that you're applying so they can support you in any way possible. And again, you'll probably be relying on your schools, some people at your school for the recommendations. So you have some questions about how many people will be chosen for GSA. There will be, right now we believe we'll have capacity for 256 student spots at the 2021 summer program, which is how many we've had for a number of years. It's also historically the largest that the program has ever been. Class sizes do vary art form to art form, and the class size of each art form, or the number of people that we accept for each art form, generally speaking, is in ratio to the number of applicants that we see for each art form. So you'll remember I said earlier on that we see the most amount of applicants in instrumental music and visual art. Well, those are our 2 largest art forms at the summer program. So instrumental music is 50 students, visual art is 36. On the other end of the spectrum, film and photography is 12 students, architecture and design is 13, and the rest of the art forms, generally speaking, are going to have 20-something or 30-something spots in them. I think you would have seen through walking through the portal that there is a separate application for each art form. There are parts of the application that are the same across all art forms, but you have to fill out a separate application for each art form. So you will be answering potentially some of the same questions in 2 different applications if you're applying for 2 different art forms. For the personal question video and the personal question essay, those are great examples. Those are the same question for both of your applications. So let's say you're applying for creative writing and dance. Well, you can submit the same personal question essay and personal question video for both if you would like. There's no problem with that whatsoever. However, if your answer to those essay questions is different when you think about yourself as a creative writer versus yourself as a dancer, you're welcome to submit a different answer in your creative writing application than in your dance application. So that's really up to you and how you interpret your answer to those questions. And in your accepted account for your application, you do not have to use your legal first name. If you have another name that you use, that's fine. In terms of legal names, we will make sure that we understand those more when it comes time to being accepted into the program formally. Although even then, we make sure that we understand if anyone has a preferred name or another name that they go by, and we'll just use that name anytime during the program. So present yourself as you want to be presented is the bottom line there, because that's what's important. We want to get to know who you are. Thanks for that question. Someone asked, would you suggest using my school email when applying, or should I use my personal email? Use the email address that you are going to be able to check the most and the most often. So use the most accessible email address to you, because we will be emailing you. There is also a messaging feature within Accepted, the application platform. So you will see us sending you messages on Accepted as well, but I believe you should receive an email anytime you get an Accepted message letting you know that that message is there. So again, the recommendations do need to be from a teacher or a school administrator. They cannot be from a family member. Someone asked if they can be from a GSA alum who you're friends or family with. Generally speaking, probably not. And again, there's a lot more information in the applicant guide about who those recommenders need to be. So take a look at that applicant guide and just email us with any questions. Oh, I love this question. I love all these questions. Do we have to go to college for the specific thing we apply for with the scholarship? So, okay, let's back up for a moment. There are almost 30 colleges and universities that provide scholarships to students for having gone through GSA, which is an amazing benefit of being accepted into the program. So for those colleges that offer GSA alumni scholarships, it is really up to the university or the college what the parameters are around that scholarship. So for some of the scholarships, they are full tuition. For some of the scholarships, they might be a couple $1,000s. For some of them, you might have to have a certain ACT score. For others, you might not. For some of the scholarships and some of the schools, you will have to major in something specific. And for others, it's really just for attending the university and whatever you want to major in. So the scholarships are listed on our website underneath the alumni section of our website. And we include the parameters from each school as they have last communicated them to us. But if you have any questions, reach out to us, or what might be more helpful is to actually reach out to the school that you're most interested in to check that out. So go to the alumni section of the GSA website, look for the scholarships to learn more there. It's a great question. I'm skipping over a couple of these questions that I think we've answered. So there's a question of, like, let's say you're applying to vocal music. Would you recommend that I apply even if I don't have experience with certain aspects of that area, like traditional art form singing? So I'll address this question and kind of expand it to other art forms as well. So in that applicant guide, one of the first things you'll see is a description of the curriculum for that art form at the GSA summer program, so you know what you're getting yourself into. Do not be worried or intimidated if you see things in that description that you do not have experience with. Another great example of this is visual art. Our visual art program at the summer program goes through drawing and painting, ceramics and sculpture, printmaking, and by no means do we expect all of our applicants or all of our successful applicants to those who are afforded into the program to have experience with all those different types of visual art. So if you are interested in an art form, if you feel like you can get together the materials that we're asking for, and you're looking at the criteria and putting your best foot forward, really encourage you to put yourself out there and apply, even if you don't have experience with maybe everything it looks like you might be studying in the art form, because GSA is all about growth. We expect everyone to learn and discover new things at GSA. So if you've already done everything we're going to teach you at GSA, then we wouldn't have a reason for having the program in the first place. So still really encourage you to put yourself out there, even if you're not sure if you've had experience with everything that we might be doing at the summer program. It's a great question. How will I know that my recommenders have completed their part? Will there be a green mark indicating that is complete once done? That is a great question. I believe once you submit your application fully, you can go back in and see if your recommendation has been submitted. So I do believe you're able to see that. You might not be able to see it until you have fully submitted your application. So the best way, I think, for you to check in on your recommenders is to reach out to them and just ask if they've submitted their recommendation yet or not. And also remember, on our end, we can see all the recommenders who have not completed recommendation forms. So we send them messages reminding them as well. And also just know this, let's say worst case scenario, your recommender is not able to or forgets to fill out your form. We will not disqualify you on January 11th, the day after the applications are due, because your recommenders have not filled out that form. Instead, we will just keep contacting them until they're able to upload it. So just know that a missing recommendation form is not going to stop your application from being reviewed. It's just going to prompt us to kind of step up our communication with the recommender to say, hey, we're starting to review this applicant. Can you please complete this part for us? And those recommendation forms, just so you know, they probably take about 5 to 6 minutes to fill out. They're super simple. So someone has asked a question about, their daughter has started at a new school this year in Kentucky, and it sounds like you may have just moved from out of state. Will there be an option for her to relay her previous experience or only her current experience? And we're definitely interested in everyone's previous experience, what you're walking into, even if it is outside of Kentucky. If you live in a border county and you take private lessons, across the river or across the state lines, we would definitely want to know about that. I think it's going to vary art form to art form based on those questions that we ask. Also, if there's previous experience that you have that you feel like might fit into your personal question essay or personal question video, you can feel free to mention that there as well. So definitely invite you to speak to your entire experience or previous experience, even if that's from schools outside of the state. And if I didn't correctly address that question to the person who asked it, please email us because it sounds like you have a pretty specific situation and we would be glad to talk to you about it. So somebody asked, where is the application on the website? So again, if you just go to KentuckyGSA.org and you'll see something on the homepage that says, are you interested in applying? Click that. The top clickable link on that next page will be the Apply Now button. That should take you to the accepted platform that we went to at the beginning of this webinar. So if you missed the beginning of the virtual info session, just check out the recording. It should be posted by tomorrow, and review the beginning, and they walk through that exact process. When you're accepted into the program, we do have a lot of information for you, including what to bring, what to pack. And you do your own laundry at the program, which is super cool. I think everyone learns how to do laundry. You don't need to bring money for it. It's provided in terms of the actual laundry machines. The washers and dryers are not, they are money operated, but we've turned them on free for you all, thanks to the generosity of UK. And food is provided at the summer program. So you've got 3 square meals provided to you a day. The recommendation forms are due on January 10th. So everything for your application is due on January 10th. But like I said earlier, your recommendation forms, if for some reason it's lingering out there, it's not going to immediately disqualify you. But that's why we really encourage you to get those recommendation forms since you're recommenders now, so they've got plenty of time to fill them out. Someone asked, how long should the short essay and video essay be? The applicant guide says how the maximum amount of words and duration for the essay and the video respectively. Off the top of my head, I think the essay is a maximum of 250 words, and I think that the video is a maximum of 90 minutes. So everything that you have to upload in your application, we're going to give you a maximum duration if it's a video, maximum number of words or pages if it's a document, and so on. Someone asked, in drama and creative writing, do we study works not by students? And I will say in both of those art forms and other art forms as well, you as students do create work, and you do work with other students' work, but you are also going to be studying work by folks beyond your classroom. So maybe, people who are part of the, contemporary canon of drama or creative writing. So I hope that answers that question. Someone's asked if we have any information on collab submissions. I'm not sure what that question totally entails. So if you could just shoot us an email at gsainfo@kentuckyperformingarts.org and just explain that question a little bit more, I'll be glad to answer it. If you apply for more than one art form, can your recommenders be the same people for both art forms? Absolutely they can. So again, more information in the applicant guide about who your recommenders need to be, but it is totally possible that you could use, in fact, a lot of people use the same school administrator. That very often makes sense. And if you want to use the same teacher, that's totally fine. If you have two different teachers in each of those art forms that know you very well in each of those relative art forms, then you might consider using two different teachers, but it's fine if you can't. What I will caution you about, though, is if you use the same person as a recommender for both art forms, as a recommender, they cannot see which recommendation form is for which art form. So they're going to get two emails with the same recommendation form to fill out, but they aren't going to be able to tell which is for which application. So if you fill out your creative writing application first, and then your drama application second, communicate that to your recommender. Just the first email that you got should be my creative writing recommendation, and the second should be my drama recommendation as well. Chances are, if you're using the same person, they may not really have different content about you for each of those different recommendations based on the art form, but just go ahead and point that out to them so they also don't think it's a duplicate email, because they will have to fill out two recommendations, one for each art form. It's a little quirk in the system. So this person asked, what if we changed high schools and the first one was more arts focused, but we had to leave and transfer to an online school? Will this impact my application or considerations? Absolutely not. We will not judge you on your high school. We will judge you on the criteria listed in the applicant guide, which, if you will see, is really related to the examples of your artwork that you upload, your videos, your documents, your essay questions that you answer. So your high school just kind of gives us a bit more of contextualized information about you, but it will not be used against you, or it will not give you necessarily a leg up either. That's a great question. Thanks for asking. It's totally fine if you can't get a recommender from a teacher in your art form. We understand not everyone has a teacher in their art form. Again, that's covered in the applicant guide, so take a look at that. But totally fine if your teacher recommender is not in your art form. If you are on the fence of deciding between three separate art forms, how do you recommend deciding? So it sounds like this person is really into three art forms, but you can only choose two for GSA. I totally get it, and I also applaud you for being so multidisciplinary. What I encourage you to do is to read the opening of the applicant guide where it talks about the program for each art form at the summer program, and think if any of those really resonate with you more. And then go look at the criteria, which is later on in the applicant guide, and think about if there is a set of criteria for each art form. If either of those sets of criteria feel like something you're more confident in your ability to show in your application. And so maybe you'll feel like there are two of those art forms where you might have a stronger application. So I would consider both your level of interest and also the work that you have for the application, like what we're asking for and how we're scoring it, and see if maybe two of those art forms really stick out to you more in terms of your confidence and your interest. So it's a hard decision to make. So maybe talk to a mentor about it as well, some friends, and see if that helps you out making your decision. At the summer program, will all groups be supervised? So yes, students are supervised all the time at GSA. Students all agree to a code of conduct in order to accept their position at the summer program. We have a robust residential life staff that we hire. So students are always supervised. They are in some kind of programming from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. every day. When they are not in programming, it's not like a Rome campus in the city of Lexington as you please. You're not going anywhere unless you're under the supervision of a responsible trained adult who works for the Governor's School for the Arts. So if I'm a finalist for vocal music, can I sing the same song that I submitted during my initial application? I believe we actually might even ask you to do so. So again, review your applicant guides for the final round information. Again, you won't know if you're a finalist until February, but we will often tell you in that part of the application whether or not you'll need to submit new materials in the final round or the same materials, or if it's kind of up to you. Varies art form to art form. So just to verify, everything that we walked through in this webinar is what needs to be filled out by January 10th. So by January 10th, you need to have all the application filled out, which we just described in the beginning of this webinar, and also your recommendation forms are due, which we've discussed a little bit already. Love this question. Does the headshot have to be professional, or can it just be taken on a phone? It can absolutely just be taken on a phone. Let's talk about headshots for a moment. I don't know if you noticed the one that I put up there, but I took it with a phone in this office about an hour ago. So everything that you submit can be uploaded on a smartphone. It can be done in your home. You do not need to hire a professional video crew. There are some art forms like, dance, generally speaking. If you can access a dance studio, that's great. We also know that because of COVID and the pandemic, that a lot of us don't have access outside of our homes the way that we used to. So you're going to see in the applicant guides for things like working with a live accompanist or recording your dance audition in a dance studio, or being really flexible this year. So if there's something that you can't access, either just because you don't have a live accompanist that you work with normally, or you do, but you're not seeing them right now because of the pandemic, we're going to be super flexible this year. And coming back to headshots, does not have to be professional. Personally, I know this is a creative program, but I would recommend your headshot not include things like Instagram filters or anything like that. So just make it a picture of your face. And then in terms of the videos and other things that you submit, your images, those can all be taken with a smartphone. But if you want to use a better camera, or if you want to work with a professional team, you're more than welcome to. But this application is meant for folks to submit with what they have in front of them. So if you have any other questions about that, just let us know. Your manuscripts cannot be submitted as Google Docs. They do have to be, everything has to be uploaded into the application portal. It's a great question. So you'll just need to take that Google Doc, download it, and upload it. If you have any questions about whether you qualify for free and reduced lunch, just give us an email and we'll talk to you about that. Your teacher recommender does not have to teach at your school. They could be a private teacher or just a teacher you worked with in another way. So someone asked, do we need middle names for the application? I don't have one. Great question. I believe actually we do require a middle initial. Reach out to us if you're comfortable just kind of putting a placeholder initial there just to fulfill that window. That will be fine. But if that doesn't feel right to you, reach out to us and we'll see what we can do. Because we want you to feel like you're putting your most authentic, best foot forward. Does the essay need to be typed in a certain format, font, or font size? This is, I'm assuming, referring to the personal question essay that everyone has to upload. No, we do not have format or font requirements for that. I think we ask that you type out the question at the beginning of your essay response. That does not, the essay question itself does not count toward the word count. However, for creative writing manuscripts, there are many more formatting requirements, font size requirements, and those are listed in the creative writing applicant guide. Will you be requiring students to get the COVID-19 vaccine if it is available? That is a great question. And I don't have a solid answer for you right now, other than we are still figuring out, obviously, what next summer will look like. And we are very hopeful that we will be able to safely convene in person. We're just really doing our research right now of what that will entail. So we're still in the process of figuring out the safest approach and what to do if there isn't a vaccine, what to do if there is. So we will keep you looped in on that. What I can tell you is that safety is our #1 priority every year at GSA. This year is no different, most certainly. Safety is at the forefront of everything with GSA, so we'll keep you updated on that. If you'd like to discuss that more, feel free to reach out to us. If you're applying for 2 art forms, I believe you can start your second art form application anytime. You don't have to start them at the same time. I encourage you to just start them as soon as you can, but I believe you can start them. I don't think there's any reason why you can't start them at different times. You will see there's a thumbnail for the headshot, and then when you click on it, it expands. Your whole face does not need to be in that thumbnail. Just make sure that when it expands, we see your whole face as well. Someone asked, I know at GSP you can't have your phone with you during the day. Is it the same for GSA? Should I bring a camera for pictures since I won't have my phone? This is the same at GSA. So you are not allowed to take your cell phone, your smart devices, outside of your dorm room, which is kind of crazy for some folks, but usually we find by the end of the first week, no one really minds it. And the really reason that we do that is because there's so much going on at GSA. It's such a privilege to be there that we really want to live in the present and kind of disconnect from our smartphones, in order to connect at GSA. Disconnect to connect. So you will be able to still use your phone in the morning before you leave your room, at night when you're back in your room. We have a lot of students bring disposable cameras, actually, blast from the past, to take pictures during the program. So certainly encourage you to do that. You're still welcome to bring disposable cameras or other types of cameras to take pictures. You just can't have your smart devices and your phones outside of your dorm room. You are allowed to bring food into your room and also order food beyond the 3 meals a day. Definitely understand, for some of us, we want more than those 3 meals a day. This person, I think, is asking specifically because they are an athlete. So yeah, absolutely, you're welcome to have snacks. Bring snacks with you. We'll have parents send care packages sometimes of snacks. And also there is a big rush on Postmates when we all get back from the dorm in most years, for some late night delivery. When I was a GSA student, I had a lot of like 10:30 p.m. Chinese meals personally. So again, each art form is going to have a questionnaire about your past experience in your art form. Someone's asking if we want to know about their middle school experience as well. And if we ask you a question where we say, tell us about all of your experience in your art form, you can feel free to include middle school. A lot of the questions are going to be, more specific about, are you currently studying something? Does your high school offer a class in this? Does your community have a program in this? But if you have the chance to talk about your experience, back into middle school and elementary school, maybe even, maybe that comes up in your essay if you wanted to, feel free to talk about that. If it's important to you and relevant to you as you think about yourself as an applicant for GSA, we want to hear about it. All right, so someone is saying they're having trouble finding our application on our website. So I'm going to look into that. Here at the end, I'm going to show you where it should be again. Okay. For the final round, whether it's in person or virtual, it will not be anonymous. You will be, face to face, whether in person or virtually, with the judges. So it will be a kind of synchronous, more real time experience. For vocal music, this also applies to musical theater. If you can't find a song with only piano accompaniment, you can submit a song a cappella if needed. Again, this kind of goes back to our guidelines about, especially right now with COVID, we're being pretty flexible with accompaniment guidelines. And actually, in the past, you've also been able to submit songs without accompaniment as well if you can't find a live accompanist. But that's totally fine if you can't find a song with only piano accompaniment. Send us an email if that wasn't specific enough for your question. If you get accepted into GSA and GSP, you cannot attend both. Most likely there will be overlap in those programs, and for both GSA and GSP, you do have to be present for the whole program. This past summer, because GSP went down to 1 week and GSA was virtual, I think there were some students who were actually able to attend their 1 week at GSP because it fell after GSA, but it was never because the two overlapped. So just know, some of you, if you get accepted into both, may have a very difficult decision to make, but what a great decision to have to make. There is some free time during GSA, believe it or not, during the summer program. We're a pretty intense and rigorous program, like I said. So we're basically going from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. most days. We start an hour later on Saturday. We don't start till the afternoon on Sunday, but we do have some free time, and it's really important that everyone kind of gets that rest and that informal social time. So we have about, on general, 1,400 applications each year for those 256 spots. This is something I covered in the GSA 101 webinar. It's worth being really transparent that GSA is a competitive program to get into. And we don't have 256 spots just because there are that many talented young artists in the state of Kentucky. So, the reason we have that many spots is more to do with things like funding capacity and stuff like that. So it is a competitive program to get into, but we really don't want that to discourage anyone. Encourage you to put yourself out there. The only way to make sure you don't get in is to not apply. And if for some reason this doesn't work out in your favor, just know that every year GSA unfortunately has to turn away super talented students. We really hope that you'll use that to inspire your next step in applying for something else. All right, we're gonna come back to filling out the application in just a moment, so hang tight. We'll go through those first few steps. There are some exercise groups during the summer program, so if you're an athlete or you just like to exercise, we do find some ways to make sure that you have a chance to do that. And a couple questions about recommenders. They have to be good writers, or are they just filling out a form? For the most part, they're just filling out a form. There are, I think there's at least one text response that they do have to give us, just giving us a little bit more information about you. But they don't have to, be the most poetic writers in the world. Just someone who knows you well can just give us a couple remarks about your fit for the program. Your school administrator is not asked, your school administrator recommender is not asked about your level of artistic skill. We know, for instance, many school counselors might not have had a chance to see you in the school play or something like that. So just know that that teacher recommendation is the one that asks about a student's abilities as a young artist. And if for some reason that teacher has not experienced the student's artwork or artistic skill, they can just let us know that they don't know about that side of the student, and that's totally fine. That will not be held against the student. Okay, so I think That answers just about all of our questions. I know that there are some very specific questions that I jumped over. So if your question wasn't answered or I tried to answer it but didn't fully answer it, shoot us an email. We'll be glad to talk to you at gsainfo@kentuckyperformingarts.org. I am going to go back to the application here and just walk us through it one more time because I know some folks are having some issues, and I just want to make sure we understand why that is. Make sure that there's not any issues on our part. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Just one moment. We're going to walk through this again. All right. So I'm going to go to KentuckyGSA.org. And this is our homepage. I'm going to click on Learn More and Apply. Prospective students, parents, and educators, you should see this apply for GSA 2021 right here. So if you are not seeing that on your screen, let me know in the Q&A feature, if you don't mind. You'll click Apply Now. And it will take you to the Governor's School for the Arts. Now I saw where you'll have these instructions to select your art form from this drop-down menu over here. Now I saw some of you were saying that you were confused because it's asking you to select an organization. That might be something that it's doing when you set up your profile. I think it's possible also to kind of get a little lost in Accepted's general website because this program is used by so many other organizations. So you may have to kind of search on Accepted for the Kentucky Governor's School for the Arts. But if you ever get lost, you can just come back to, come back to our website and use those links that I just used to come back to this page. Also, I will point out, excuse me, I'm sorry, I keep jumping around here. The URL for this page is app.getaccepted.com/Kentucky Center GSA. So you might try typing in that URL as well that you're seeing up here. HTTPS, and then you got app.getaccepted.com/Kentucky Center GSA. So app.getaccepted.com/Kentucky Center GSA. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. See if you all have any information for me in the Q&A. Okay. So it's looking like maybe, hopefully that worked. All right. Well, without any more questions to answer, I'm going to go ahead and end our webinar today. I see in the chat feature you all have been getting to know each other. That's great. Thank you all for being supportive of each other as applicants. I think that's super important. Again, if there are any questions that we didn't answer in today's webinar, just shoot us an email. We hope to see you at our art form specific webinars in November and December. And we look forward to supporting your GSA application. So as we say at GSA, keep going forth and making great art. When the webinar ends today, you will, if you're watching on Zoom, you'll receive a survey. Please fill out the survey. It's super helpful to us. And we look forward to chatting with you soon. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.